July 20th, 2021 City Council meeting will come to order. Roll call.
Mayor Cicerillo. Councilmember Stam.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Davis. Here. Council President Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Gregory. Here. Councilmember Kerstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Colbert.
Here.
We have anyone from Minister Alliance here? Seeing no one, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 5 is approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6, administration agenda, City Council meeting minutes from July 6, 2021.
Commit a motion to approve the minutes of the July 6, 2021 regular council meeting as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve meeting minutes from July 6, 2021. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 7, presentations of proclamations. First one is Herschel Smith proclamation. I'm going to read this off, and then after that, we will have all of the city staff that's here come up to the front with Mr. Smith, and we'll take a picture. Whereas Herschel Smith has served the City of Valley Center for 16 years, and whereas Mr. Smith has been instrumental in serving the citizens of Valley Center since July 30th, 2005, and whereas Mr. Smith has worked in many capacities, including equipment operator, stormwater officer, streets foreman on behalf of the City of Valley Center. Now, therefore, I, Ben Anderson, City Council President, in recognition of his retirement, do hereby proclaim July 30th, 2021 as Herschel Smith Day. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Valley Center to be affixed this 20th day of July, 2021. I know there's a few people here that would like to join. Herschel, you can come up here. Back it up there, sir. Anybody else want to come up?
All the other city staff, come on up.
Come back up here. We'll give some more room for. Oh.
Come on, everybody. Oh, yeah, all of us. Come on, Barry. Oh, come on.
We're just standing up in the back.
Council members are going
Do what?
Yeah, do any of the council members want to get there?
We just stand up right here. Done it already.
Eric, can you take a knee, please? Just stand up.
Free to choose from. I think you're in good shape.
There's anything you want to say? You got an open mic. Now's the time.
Thank the City of Valley Center. I've enjoyed working here, and I'm gonna be sad to leave.
Thank you. Remind the audience and anyone listening, if not here, there's a reception for Herschel from 1:30 to 3, Friday, July 30th. That's not this Friday, but the following. Oh, the 23rd. I'm sorry. I got it wrong on my notes. At the community center. So this Friday from 1:30 to 3, there'll be a reception. And I just wanted to add that anytime that there was a piece of equipment coming down the road and you can see the outline of that big cowboy hat, there was always a big smile underneath that mustache. And yeah, I don't know, you always seemed like you were happy to go wherever you were going. And I know that wherever you were going was not always the best situation because of the stuff that you took care of, but we do appreciate that. So thank you very much. Item 7B, Mr. Kane, Mr. Smith, whoever.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have with us Dr. Walker and Mercy Umri from the Hugo Wall School at Wichita State. They facilitate the mini MPA program, which our City Treasurer Matt Kane participated in, and they're here to present him his plaque for completing the program.
Thank you, Council, for making time to recognize for his accomplishment of completing the mini MPA. The 16-week course of study in which he learned budget and finance. which
Can
he
I
already-
have you speak into the microphone? I'm sorry.
Budget and finance, which he already knows. But he also learned a few other things too. Strategic planning, human resource management, and all kinds of other things. He was a fantastic participant in the program. We were really happy to have him and hope to see him again soon. Also, I want to claim Barry, who actually has a master's degree in public administration from the Hugo Wall School of Public Affairs. Yay. Yeah, can we take a
Yes,
picture?
please.
You gotta get your family up here, your wife and kids. Come on, Beth, come on, kids, come on. Go stay up there, come on. Gotta get the support team. Perfect.
Congratulations, Matt.
And thank you for this opportunity. The leadership here is second to none, and I appreciate this.
Congratulations. Thank you. Item 8, public forum. Now is the time in the meeting that anyone here that would like to address an issue that is not on the agenda to come forward. And we have one, at least one written down. Trish Corcoran. Yes, come forward. Please state your name and your address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, I'm Trish Corcoran. My address is 715 Valley Park Drive. My husband Pat and I are one of the 7 adjacent landowners to the Fieldcrest property. And since August of 2019, we have been dealing with construction. And I just wanted to share a photo of what our yard used to look like. It's hard to see in this photo, but if you've driven by the property lately, the concrete flume that they added for drainage is failing miserably, and my backyard is filled with mud. Just at the border, but it's really unattractive. And I do want to thank Brent because you've been really receptive to the feedback that we've shared and the assistance that we've requested. Because during a number of the meetings, beginning in 2019, the city assured us that if there were issues with drainage, you would help us address that. And I know that myself and 2 other property owners are seeking that assistance now. We did officially submit a claim regarding the drainage, and I do also want to thank Public Works Director Rodney Eggleston
Mhm.
for getting out there right away and letting the contractor know that they do have a failure of their drainage. The property has become so unattractive that we looked about getting a privacy fence. We were told that because of the drainage problems, likely our fence, if we were to invest the minimum $20,000 to install it, would fail because of the drainage issues that exist right now. So ideally, we would like for the city to request that the development provide for us, what is their plan? They changed it in March. There doesn't seem to be a clear focus on what they're doing now. And ideally, we'd like to have a fence erected or a retaining wall or something. We'd like a rendering of what they have envisioning for what it's going to look like when it's finished, if it's ever finished. I mean, there's no clear date to the end of this project. And this is just one of the issues. Tuesday mornings, they collect the trash between 4 and 5 a.m. So they go around to every one of those large construction or those large industrial trash bins, and it's like thunder from 4 to 5 every Tuesday morning. We've asked that that be addressed. It hasn't yet. The lighting that's been installed that we were told would not flow over to our properties lights up a third of my backyard. And my backyard is not small. I mean, it's a deep, it brightens my windows at night. So I'll probably need to invest in some darkening blinds for my bedroom because it's that bright. Now, granted, they did turn off one of the lights, but the things that were assured to us during the development process and the approval process have not come to pass. So we will be submitting an official request, but I wanted to let everyone on the committee know, or the council know, that it's coming. And I guess that's all that I really have to offer. We did submit an official drainage problem request, which is ID number 221, and a nuisance request of 222. And I believe the compliance gentleman is looking into that. We've also submitted some requests to Mennonite Housing directly. They did pay for the tree that they killed when they flooded our yard, when they were clearing out the fire hydrants that were added at the fire department's request. So it's just an unpleasant experience. And so any assistance that can be offered by the city that was so keen on the development would be appreciated.
Thank you.
Leave these photos if you like, or you're welcome to drive by and see the.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments? Seeing none, we will move on to appointments, and having none, we will move on to committees and commissions, and having none, we will continue on to old business. Don't see any there either. So we'll go to item 12A, new business, discussion regarding quiet railroad zones. Mr. Golka.
Good evening, Council President, members of council. So this is our long-awaited presentation of our initial findings for quiet zone implementation. So if you'll recall, we started this process a few months back, really with the intent of implementing a quiet zone requiring some sort of improvement to the intersections that we have in town. What we are looking for is some sort of physical obstruction, be it pavement geometry, curb and gutter, median, or additional gate arms to prevent vehicles as well as pedestrians from entering these intersections while a train is present. It's about improving safety, and then therefore the railroad would implement a policy that would otherwise prevent them from blowing their horns as they come into town. So obviously a lot of feedback, a lot of history with this subject. We tracked down requirements associated with the curb median. We reached out to several rail consultants to make sure that we were headed down the right path. So I feel like we've got a pretty good grip on what it's going to take initially to make these improvements for quiet zone implementation. Estimates and exhibits are included in your packets this evening. I will say that we're carrying around 10% contingency, so there's around $500,000 in there. But what we have not accounted for in our $5 million total project cost estimate is any insurance, permitting, inspection costs that may come from the actual railroad. So what I can speak to is what we've encountered on the Ford Meridian project, as well as the waterline work recently, is any work that occurs within a railroad right-of-way requires a railroad flagger to be present. So anytime you're doing work, they're going to have their guy out there. You're responsible for reimbursing that cost, and it's usually to the tune of around $250 an hour. So it's not inexpensive work. So I wouldn't entirely count on getting that $500,000 contingency back. I really do feel like the $5 million is a good order of magnitude for making a decision on how to move forward. It's timely. This evening, we've got the CIP discussion next on the agenda, where that may be a good item to put towards that committee to take a closer look at how funding may occur. But really, for our purposes this evening, we wanted to get some initial feedback from council, answer any questions that you may have regarding these intersections, and then hopefully get some sort of consensus or direction on how we want to move forward. If council said, go forward, do good at all speed necessary, our next step would be to submit what we've got to BNSF, the Federal Rail Administration, Federal Highway, KDOT, and a few other agencies that have input regarding quiet zone implementation. I would suspect that their review, our meetings, and getting kind of a preliminary approval from them will take around 3 or 4 months, all in all, just logistics and getting that many people together for those conversations. So ideally, moving forward, we would survey and design very beginning of 2022 and start looking at construction in the 2022 summer, fall timeframe for some of these things. So I've been rambling for a little bit. I'll kind of open it up for discussion and do my best to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
Mr. Colbert.
Yeah, I got one. Am I reading these correct that you have a divider going down the road on Main Street?
Yes, sir. So there are certain concessions that will need to be made in terms of the flow of traffic. So in order to implement the quiet zone and prevent vehicles from driving around the gate arms, we have to have some sort of physical obstruction, which means that we are, where practical, installing a curbed median. The minimum distance from the gate arm back that we have to restrict vehicles is 100 feet. Now, there's some instances where we've gone longer for pedestrian considerations, but for the majority, our exhibits are based off of 100 feet. From that gate arm, you would have a curb median that would prevent vehicles from turning around it. There are impacts to side streets and particularly like around the elevators that would be potentially impacted by that. If council was not in favor of a curb median, then we could look at a gate arm, and that's where you start to see the costs really skyrocket. So I'll direct your attention to the final 3 intersections, or the furthest south intersections, 69th, Seneca, and 61st. We started out with medians there as the less expensive option. After several discussions with public safety and getting good input as to the size of equipment, farm equipment that frequently utilizes these crossings, the curb median just wasn't a safe idea. It wasn't a good idea. So what do we do then if we can't have a pavement restriction to it? We add gate arms. And those gate arms for the roadways are around $250,000 a pop. They are not inexpensive. And that's why you see those last 3 intersections on the list jump pretty significantly in cost, albeit smaller intersections.
Well, the other question I have is both ends of the track, you have an entrance for pedestrians crossing, okay? Does it have to be that long? Could we maybe cut it back from the crossing where the pedestrians is to the track and reduce costs on them?
The pavement, or are you questioning the
No,
location?
I'm questioning the middle divider. You have a section there that's open for pedestrians to go through.
Oh, is that 5th and Interurban? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So that the letter of the law says we have to go 100 feet from that gate arm. 100 feet puts us exactly in the middle of that crosswalk. There are some additional options that we'll look at, potentially relocating the crosswalk, reducing pavement. That's just the next level of, we're kind of at a 30% design, I'd say right now. We would get into that further detail with survey and subsequent design. So there's the possibility of improving that and reducing the curb.
Next one is it absolutely necessary to put that center divide in there?
Or we're adding gate arms. That's your other option.
The gate arms are more expensive than,
Yeah, so our order of magnitude for these pavement improvements are, somewhere around 200 and change in intersection, Meridian being an exception because it's a 4-lane larger intersection. So you're looking at about 250 an intersection for pavement improvements. One gate arm is 250, and we'd be adding at least 2 in each of these crossings.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Kerstetter.
I think, okay.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to piggyback off of Mr. Colbert after I find my notes. So I don't, like on the 5th and what we got on the screen, I don't like the idea of having a median right there with interurban right there and then the school traffic going to Wheatland. I think that'd be a terrible idea personally. One of my questions is, well, financial stuff. I know it's surprising. Is there any way we can get like grants or WAMPO, KDOT? Is that part of possible?
Yes, there
Okay.
are a variety of funding mechanisms.
Next question, do we have to, is it all in one? We have to do it all at once or can we do like in phases? So I think the bulk of the area needs to be done is the majority of the town, like from 5th Street all the way down to Meridian or Ford, excuse me. And then maybe a second phase be 69th Street and Seneca and then 61st Street.
That's an excellent point. So the quiet zone requirements basically go a half a mile in either direction of the intersection that you're trying to establish a quiet zone.
Okay.
So what that means is any crossing that's within 2,000 feet of the intersection that you are trying to implement a quiet zone for has to also be improved or it voids your quiet zone.
Okay.
So the first exhibit, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Go
This is
for it.
important. So the first exhibit has dimensions that separate those intersections out. And what you'll see is the southern 3 intersections are close to a mile south of Ford. So those could be,
Phase 2.
implemented at a later phase.
Okay. Okay. Just a lot of information right now. So I like the idea. I like the idea. I just, I didn't notice the median or the curb part that Mr. Colbert pointed out, but I don't know if I like that idea, especially on certain intersections.
Scroll down one exhibit, please.
Would that one be the main one right
So
there?
there's the typical section there in the bottom right of the screen shows what that would look like. So you'd have your standard curb and gutter on the outsides of your pavement. Then you'd have a kind of a 2-foot wide raised curb median. So that's what your street sections will look like.
Well, and so the problem with this intersection, you couldn't turn, if you're going east on 5th Street, you couldn't turn north on the interurban. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that would be, I can hear the complaints already.
Okay.
Okay?
We can provide an updated version of the estimate with the gate
Well, and
arms.
then as far as the other intersections, I guess I'd have to digest it more, but that's my 2 cents for now.
Ms. Gregory.
First of all, I'm really disappointed there aren't more people here to talk about this like there were for the roundabout, because this has been a very contested subject. Second, I really want the train blow its whistle just because the median in the street.
Ultimately, it is up to whoever is operating the train whether they feel like the situation warrants blowing a horn. So this is a policy that Valley Center would have in place and approved by BNSF. But in any instance where the operator of the train feels it necessary to blow their horn, there is nothing that we can do to prohibit them from doing that. That is a basic life safety measure that we cannot restrict. So, I mean, you would have it in place. And I think if you look at this nationally as a policy implementation of quiet zones, you do see the improvement. It's not like they do it just to mess with you. But there's going to be instances where you're still going to deal with horn noise. It would just be far less frequent than what you have it as now.
And if we go as far south as 61st Street, why are we not doing 93rd? Piggyback on what Mr. Kerstetter said, if we did just the in-town, we could cut the cost down to 1.4 million and then do the rest of it later, possibly. That's just a thought. But I really wish that the citizens were here to tell us what they would like.
Got some young ones.
Do the train horns bother you?
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'll slip you a 5 later.
Mr. Stam.
It was here before I moved here.
Amen.
Councilmember Stam.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
I just knew there would be some sticker shock when I seen it because I'd worked on a study 3 or 4 years ago in Derby, and it's expensive. And I myself, even if we got a grant for half this money, I think there's stuff in town we need to spend money on worse, like streets, infrastructure, drainage. I think it's a frivolous thing to have. Yes, it'd be nice, but like Josh said, they could still blow their horn. Just because it's there don't mean we're not going to still hear horns. I was outside with the neighbors last night and 3 trains come by. And from the time I first heard the horn, I counted it was 30 seconds. To me, that's not that big of a deal for the amount of money we're going to spend. I'm for not doing it, but that's just me. I'd rather spend the money elsewhere in town on our streets and infrastructure.
Mr. Colbert.
Yeah, I got another question for you. Which is it, 61st or 69th Street is totally within Valley Center, but not Wichita, is that correct? Or 61st?
I think all of those intersections are within our corporate limits.
I looked it up.
93rd's not, though.
93rd is not correct.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I have a few questions. I'll call on myself now. And I'm going to piggyback on Gina's kind of led into it. Is it possible to just do the ones that are in the part of the city and not ever do 69th, 61st, and Seneca? Is that just based on the half-mile radius that you were talking about from each?
Yes. Yeah. So we would, I don't want to think about it as like a legal description necessarily, but we would establish a boundary for that quiet zone, which would be based on a half mile up and downstream of whatever intersections we selected.
I think that regardless of the decision on this, I think it was our responsibility as a council to do our due diligence in finding what it cost was, because it had been so long since we had looked at a cost and other people had done them. And I will agree with Gina, if there's any grants that we could get and just do those 1 point whatever million, if we could find grants that were a matching grant and do half of it, this was a huge item. It may not be for everyone sitting up here, but for our constituents, that was something that was very big on their surveys that they did, was train noise. And it may have been here when some people moved here, but some of us were born here and we didn't have anything to do with whether the trains were here or not. We didn't choose to live here. But if there's enough people that want it changed, that's our responsibility. But we also need to justify the cost, like Matt said. I think there's a lot of redoing some of the streets now and seeing some of the other streets that need to be addressed. And that's kind of what our, long-term goals are in our CIP committee is and everything we're doing. So it's a balancing act. But I wanted to see if there was any way we can find out if there has been decreased train traffic. We had got some information from a local citizen who kind of had read up about it and knew about, they were putting in a new crossing north of here. I don't know where it was at. It was going east and west. It was supposed to decrease the amount of traffic that came through Valley Center. Do we have any way to find that out? Does anyone know their website of traintraffic.com of?
I do recall an email on that several months back, and I just don't want
Okay.
to speculate.
Rodney, our traffic counter won't work on the train tracks.
One time.
Probably similar to the picture of the fire hoses they put over the train tracks with the little. Okay.
And those are great, questions and comments. And yes, they were switching and upgrading and enhancing another line that was running to our east, I think more towards El Dorado. Now, of course, with the anticipation of the large announcement with the passenger rail service, we have to take that in consideration as well. But yeah, those are all great points and things that we'll explore as we continue to navigate this process. Now, absolutely, we will look at every single grant available. This is kind of the first step to seeing what we actually need. Get council feedback on if that is a median you want on Fifth and Interurban, or if it is the more expensive gate arms. Those are all things that we need to know before we can apply for grants. We need to have everything basically shovel ready before we can start applying for assistance and funding opportunities. Of course, with the infrastructure bill that's hanging out there, who knows what's going to be in it? Barry and Matt still are finding out, what ARPA money, what funds can be used for where every day it changes. And so, those are things that will be coming up. But this is really hats off to the council for their willingness to stick their neck out a little bit ahead of time, spend the funds to get the study done. So we have all the information ready to go. So as soon as those funding opportunities come open, there'll be thousands of municipalities across the country that apply. So we want to be first in line with our handout, trying to get as many grants as possible. So we don't have 50% or, hopefully more 80-20 or who knows, depending upon the funding source. So those are all things we'll explore, and PEC's done a great job working with staff on getting us to the point that we're at.
I have a couple more lights that came up. Mr. Kerstetter.
So I'm going to piggyback off of Mr. Stam again this time. I think we have other things we should focus on in the CIP. However, I still like the idea of the project. So, for example, could we send this, since this is for discussion only, we don't have to make a motion. Could we get on 5th Street and what was the other one? There's two roads that I think is Meridian that maybe we shouldn't have the median and maybe get better estimates as far as not having that curb and gutter.
Okay.
That way we can actually make left-hand turns in places that we're going to want to make left-hand turns. And then make phase 2 as far as 69th, Seneca, and 61st Street if we want to even approach it. Because I'm with Mr. Colbert, maybe we don't even need to do it. But I think we still have things that we should prioritize over this. However, this should be at least in the CIP discussion as well.
So just to recap, we'll have a phase 1 with the base that's basically presented now for cost at these intersections with kind of an add alternate, no turn and movement restrictions, gate arms add.
Right.
And then phase 2 being the South 3 intersections.
Right.
Okay, we can get that.
If everybody's okay with, likes that idea too.
I like it.
I do too. I think we need to dive into it a little bit more. And like Brent said, if there's a funding mechanism and it's going to cost us a percentage, I think it would be at least worth addressing and discussing more. So,
right. But I also don't want to see it something else go down lower on the list, like drainage.
Fire truck.
Fire truck, yeah.
Mr. Stam.
Sorry.
Was the railroad or the transportation people with you guys when you were out looking at the intersections and figuring out what to do on them?
No, so that's our next step. And that was my final word of caution that I was going to sign off with this evening.
That's where I was going, because they have their own rules.
Yeah, we want to get staff and council consensus on what we were doing for pavement geometry and gate arms, make sure that we as a community had a sound approach to how we wanted to see the intersections function. We know that we're implementing the best practices that they require. They're not going to come back and say that, curb median and gate arms aren't acceptable. Those are their primary safety measures. But they may come back, and I'll give an instance in another community where, we're planning on adding gate arms and utilizing existing gate arms. Their existing gate arms weren't up to current code compliance. We had to make basically telecommunications controls improvements. We had to replace entire gate arms in some instances. So this is kind of our baseline. And then I would still recommend that regardless of how serious we get about survey design, bidding, construction, we still provide these and request an initial determination from BNSF at a minimum. They'll have a better handle on their gate inventory and also be able to provide some guidance on what insurance and inspection costs would be. And then that way we can kind of paint the full picture.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I just want to say that I would be in favor of getting, more information and everything. But at this time, I personally think the whole thing is a lot of money for when we got the other things that need to be done. And I live right by the railroad tracks, and I almost never hear the railroad or the trains. But that's just my opinion.
Mr. Colbert.
Yeah, one of the questions I have is, this is the first that the general public has heard about this, correct? After this meeting?
I'll say, yeah. In large part, it's been rehashed through the decades of looking at this. I think this is the fourth time.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. So
It's been rehashed, and this here is to a point where some of these crossings, if you're going to start limitation driving a certain way or adding pedestrian in between the block of what's meant, whatever the centerpiece is going to be. And in the business district, what have they had to say? They haven't had anything to say about it yet. And I'd rather find out from them before we even consider anything.
Great idea. Great suggestion.
Because if we can't satisfy the general public and we go ahead and vote on something and put it in, we're the ones that are going to hear about it day and night. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I think this is a long way from any type of vote. This is our initial, remember, the council asked PEC to do this study for us because our constituents had asked it in our survey, and it was something that was high up on it. And I think having to do our due diligence, like I said, we didn't know any reasonable, we didn't have any recent costs at all, because I don't think we've even gotten to this point in the past. I think it was even more of just something on a napkin that somebody had written down of what it was going to cost. We were told $1 million a crossing, and taking out those south three, it's not $1 million a crossing. So I think it's something we need to keep on the table and maybe not push it full steam ahead, but I think it's what our constituents have wanted. So we'll obviously get more feedback from them as this goes on. And
Well, I'd also like the information coming from the PEC, but let's make it available to anybody who wants to review it.
Sure. All right. There's nothing to vote on. This was for information only, discussion only. Thank you, Mr. Golka. Item 12B, CIP committee discussion. Mr. Smith.
Evening once again. So that discussion was very enlightening, and that brings us to our next topic, our creation of our CIP committee, which is outlined in our strategic plan. And that's basically what this committee is going to do. It's going to accept submissions for projects, go through them, create policy to determine funding mechanisms, how we use debt, cash, et cetera. And then provide some kind of ranking criteria for these projects, and then receive some input and feedback from other boards and commissions, like the Outdoor Spaces Board, Planning and Zoning Board, et cetera. I just want to get some feedback tonight on how who this group should be comprised of. Normally, these groups are comprised of the finance department, city administrator, city engineer, and usually the other department head that's involved with that particular project. More or less, it's normally public works. Those are mainly the number one CIP projects in everyone's plan. But is there any council members that would be want to be a part of that, or should we ask for volunteers from the community? What would you guys like to see?
I'm raising my hand. I'll be there. I'd like to be a part of that.
So,
No, go ahead.
okay, I didn't want, waiting for
I'm
my
new
name
at
to be
this,
called.
so.
Yeah, you're doing fine. So this kind of feels like we're, as a council, not doing what we're supposed to as forming a CIP committee. But I guess I might not understand what we're trying to do as well. Because it ultimately should be up to the council, which, am I right or wrong?
Right.
So is this just to form up the different projects to present to the council?
Right.
Or
It would be all the due diligence and background work on all the projects that would then be presented for selection for funding by the
Okay.
council.
that makes more sense. What time of the day would you be doing this? Because I might be interested, is what I'm saying.
Any time of the day. It's
Okay.
kind of up to us for now. Trying to get that initial makeup, and then we'll bring back a more solid plan for the actual group itself.
Barry, what have we done in the past? I don't recall. Have we had a CIP committee before? Has it been the whole council that functioned as a CIP committee?
Yes, it's always been the council as a whole, and then projects will be placed on the CIP, and then every 2 years, they'll review the list and say, well, let's do that one and that one. There's no rating criteria, there's no priority list, there's no cost benefit analysis. And then along with our strategic plan, and the community surveys will be sending out on an annual basis. That'll also help, and that selection criteria for those projects will then ultimately be decided upon by the council.
I'm going to make this comment knowing that there's plexiglass shields up, so I can't have anything thrown at me, but I think the entire city council should be part of the committee, regardless of whether they can make every meeting or not. I agree with Mr. Kerstetter. I think it's important that all of us are involved in this. And whether we attend every meeting or not, or if staff does legwork in between meetings, I think it's important that all of the council is part of forming the CIP.
Now, of course, you can always have, CIP workshops like we've had in the
Okay.
past and all those things. All this is really an advisory committee, is really very similar to, when we set up the pool and recreation center committee, where it consists of a few council members, X amount of members, if you want certain members from the school board, if you want certain members from a certain committee, if you want all members just from the city at large, and just say, hey, we want 9 volunteers. You all go out, find the volunteers, bring them back to us. We approve, kind of a committee formation would be the next step. So tonight is really just a discussion on, what do you see as a makeup?
Okay.
Do you see a couple members from the school board? Do you see 3 council members, 2 council members? Do you see a few people from certain organizations, just members in the community? And then what Barry will do, and city staff will come back and then give you a formal formation of the actual advisory committee per state statute, and lay that all out for you. So tonight really just a kind of introduction to it. Barry's done a great job at jumping all over the strategic plan and implementing what Ryan and his staff had put together with that committee. So now taking it to the next level on focusing on just CIP. So we'll still have the CIP workshops with the full council. The council will have the ultimate say, but this will just be an advisory of saying, hey, this is what we're hearing from our neighbors and our friends.
I have 2 people that want to speak, but I want to withdraw my comment then about having everybody involved. If it's still going to flow through and we're still going to do CIP workshops, then that's totally fine.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would be willing to volunteer as a council member to do it. And then my 2 cents, I would like to see city at large and business owners and school district representatives, whether it be school board members or staff, administration. I personally like to see 2 from the school, at least 2 business owners, and then a handful of at-large citizens. Mr. Kerstetter.
So why not just have it like the land bank? And then it's just the entire council? Just like what? That was my thought, and then you explained that, but as far as who's on it, I like the idea of the business owners. I'm not so keen on the idea of the school board because they'd have to live inside the city limits, I guess. I don't, if it's the city of Valley Center versus the school board, the school districts, there's a larger area. All I got for right now.
Mr. Colbert.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that, have we ever done this before? If I remember correctly, in 2013, we set up a CIP and used the local populace, more or less, to be on the committee, but also city officials were only 3 people out of it. The rest was all the community, the business people, the law enforcement, and I think there was one government. Was there one government, Ryan? Or do you remember? 13. Yeah, that's right. You weren't. But I think that's what it was. It was set up that way. It was for the bicycle and path area that we did. And it proved out to work out pretty good because we're now finally going to see the results of it in the next couple of years. So I think it'd be a good idea.
And we can do it either way. We can use the council as a committee itself and just have additional workshops up front during the time, review. Yeah, real diligent process going through every project and every detail during those workshops. But either way, it's fine with me.
When does this committee need to be formed? I guess my question, I don't really want to go down the line and ask people if they want to be on it or not.
Right.
We have time to get back by the next meeting if people are
Yeah, the
interested in
goal
doing
in
it?
the plan is to have it created by the end of 21.
Okay.
So we have time to do it. I can bring back some examples next time if you want me to do that, or
Can we revisit it next
Things
meeting
like
and
that.
just discuss? Mr. Kerstetter?
Just off the top of my head, and what do the other cities our size do for this kind of thing? Any idea? Can we call around and see what they do?
yeah, mainly it's just internal staff.
Okay.
They just get projects that are submitted by council members, they review them and bring them all the
Well,
information back.
I'm just remembering when I first was on council, it seems like we did something with the previous administrator that we ranked them and then they got back to us, and then we chose the top 2 rankings or based off of how much money we had. So it feels like we've kind of done something already like this. Hey, look at that.
Yeah.
What year was that?
2015, well, the 2016 through 2025 capital budget.
Okay.
Now, did that have input from the citizens or just administration?
Just
It was administration presenting it to the council.
And so, what I really like about, this approach and this philosophy as well is, we might be able to kind of, have citizens input, but also kind of groom them to also have interest in serving on the council. If you've seen in our last, the upcoming election, we have a vacancy in Ward 4 with no one running in it. So I think this is a good opportunity for that strategic plan, for that citizen engagement component to try to get more interest in, with Councilman Davis not running for reelection, there's an opening in that ward with no one running in it. So, it also is an opportunity for them to kind of get a little sense of, hey, how does it work? How does local government even function? With you as members of current council, when you go and ask your neighbors, hey, I want you to be on this committee or you'd be great at this, that means a lot. Then they take interest in it. And then you never know who would then be interested in, potentially running for council as well and getting more involved in making these key decisions. So there's a lot more to it than just, city staff, we absolutely can. I mean, we're trained, we're professionally trained to make recommendations, to bring you these things, to rank them in order of what we think the priorities are. But I think it's a good opportunity for that citizen engagement part that was so key in the strategic plan that we just passed.
Mr. Evans.
I just kind of wanted to go off of what you just said, that I think how we did the strategic plan, but bringing the local populace into it, it gave them opportunity to present things that maybe we as the staff or we as a council don't think about. And so I think it's a great idea to have some of our local citizens be able to be involved with this as well.
And maybe engage them in a positive light, whereas a lot of citizens interaction here with this council is maybe only negative when they show up because of something they don't like. So if we're reaching that, I mean, you're sitting here tonight because yours started as kind of a negative interaction and you got exposed to it and now you're sitting up here.
Here I am.
I agree. I think exposure and there's some ownership then too to other people. So I agree with that. So I already spoke on what I think, what we should have. So maybe we'll come back next meeting and have another discussion
Bring
on
back
it.
some examples and some recommendations as well. So.
Ms. Gregory has a comment.
Yes, I just wanted to caution you to govern the size of the committee because you don't want it to be
That's important.
25 people.
Yeah.
That's all.
Duly noted.
For the
there are no other-
feedback.
Go ahead, sorry.
I said, thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Moving on, item 13, consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 14, staff reports. Mr. Schreck. Mr. Owings, not, oh, he is here. Wow. I can't. I apologize, Mr. Owings. Thank you for attending tonight. Public Safety Director Newman. Public Works Director Eggleston. Mr. Golka.
Members of council, I think staff would echo my excitement in the announcement of a comprehensive project budget schedule and funding workshop that we'll be having internally here on the 29th. So I look to bring back the minutes of that meeting and paint a little bit more detailed picture of some of the projects that we have going on right now outside of what you just see in our staff reports. So some really good information coming. I'm excited about that meeting. Also, the Nest drainage improvements, that contract has already been awarded in McCullough. They're looking to start that work next week. We've got a pre-construction meeting tomorrow afternoon with staff, and McCullough will engage the local property owners to make them aware of the pending construction and what life's going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney Arbuckle. Assistant City Administrator of Finance, Smith.
Just a few items. Any council members wanting to attend the League of Kansas Municipalities Conference in October, please let Christy know. The first early bird sign up deadline is this Friday. Any signups after that, the price increases. Our financials online have been updated on the budget dashboard. And then just want to let everyone know we did receive our first distribution of our ARPA funding. So we are in, that is in the bank, and the second half will be distributed next July 22.
Thank you. City Administrator Clark.
I can't go 2 meetings without saying something. Good evening, members of council. As you've seen and noticed, we've been busy the last few weeks here with a lot of mill and overlays on, of course, Meridian, on 5th Street, and also on Main Street in preparation, hopefully trying to get everything done and painted by the start of school. Main Street right now is being completed on the north side of Main Street from Birch all the way to West Street. So we want to thank Pearson Construction for doing a fantastic job so far. If you haven't had a chance to drive on Meridian or 5th, those are all done as far as the overlays go. Those are great improvements from what those roads were and the shape that they were in. So looking forward to having the citizens, impressed and pleased with our expenditures, around $200,000. That's similar to the same numbers that we budget for and we'd expend in a lot of our patching and repairs, but doing mill and overlays, like we said before, really are a longer term fix, and you're really able to see that solution in the final product right away. So really thank Pearson for doing that. Like I mentioned before, the county will then be picking up on Meridian from where we stopped north of city limits all the way out to 125th Street. And then from 125th east to the interstate will be done yet this year, I believe is when it's slated, with Pearson doing that for Sedgwick County. So it'll be a nice ride all the way out to the interstate if you want to avoid Broadway. Yes, Broadway is closed still at 77th and Broadway as planned. I do apologize for the confusion and the congestion on 69th and Broadway. That's something that neither ourselves nor Park City city staff were aware of when that occurred. And so sometimes when you have third parties in charge of your roads for the current time, those things just slip through the cracks. And so there's a lot of citizens that were frustrated. We apologize for the inconvenience. But right now, you do need to avoid 69th Street until the end of this month and Broadway. And then, of course, 77th and Broadway, for the next few months. But making sure that you're not going through or around the barricades unless you live in those areas on 77th Street. The police and law enforcement are out. They will be issuing citations now. You've had plenty of time to find alternative routes. And so if you are found driving and traveling in those areas and do not live there, you will receive a citation. So you're all aware of that. I think yesterday there were 3 or 4, a few given out. So the police are serious. That's for the safety of not only the construction workers on the ground working, but also for the residents there as well. Their yards are getting driven through. People are not being respectful of their property, and that's not their fault. This road construction project is for all of us to benefit from when it's over. And right now during construction, it's just a little frustrating, but be patient. It will all be worth it in the end. I promise you that. And as always, if you have any questions or concerns, please give us a call at City Hall, and I'm happy to talk to everybody. I'll stand to any questions.
Mr. Kerstetter.
I noticed over the weekend that recently, the road closed signs at Broadway and 85th Street disappeared and then reappeared. Is there any reason why that happened, or I assume it got straightened out, but I don't like assuming.
Yeah, so those are being moved on a regular basis from Park City. When there's events at Hartman Arena, they're sliding them farther to the south. So then people aren't trying to figure out, Hartman's closed, I can't go this way, when traffic can flow to that entrance at Hartman. And so Park City's moving those barricades during the weekend. And then also on Broadway, 169th is open. They've been moving them for the race traffic as well. So 81 Speedway is still open for business. Make sure you check out all their great weekend schedules in our local newspaper, the Ark Valley News. And then also too, Hartman Arena has a lot of events in the parking lot, inside, of course. So those are still open. So that's why the barricades have been kind of moving back and forth.
Is there any way we can get that out so everybody knows that it's not just because we're confused? It's because of the events at Hartman, or any way we can communicate that more effectively?
We'll absolutely look into that and see what we can do and coordinate better with Park City. I'm not even sure when they move those and when they don't on the Hartman Arena side. I just know the 81 Speedway side because a lot of them are coming from Ford Street now, just because of 69th being closed. And so Ford Street is being used for that. I told them that we're leaving our barricades up the way they are. So, that race traffic, of course, to the entrance will be allowed during race nights.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Governing body reports. Mr. Stam.
I was going to talk about the debacle of the construction projects, but Brent took care of that, so I have nothing.
Mr. Evans.
I have nothing.
Mr. Davis.
I have nothing.
Mr. Anderson. I have nothing. Mrs. Gregory.
I have nothing.
Mr. Kerstetter,
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Wilson,
I'm good tonight, thank you.
Mr. Colbert.
Yeah, I got a few things. I can't. I got a email today from WAMPO. If anybody's interested, I think it'd be something that the council would like to hear. It's a webinar for pedestrian safe crisis in America, and WAMPO's it runs from 2 to 3 p.m. and all you do is go on WAMPO and they'll give you the information. That's the first one. The second one is the annual Economic Outlook Conference. That's coming up on October 7th at the Convention Center. If anybody's interested, I got the flyer here for that too. Other than that, I'm curious as to why the Boy Scouts are here. Nobody's asked.
So I will. You might come up and say,
Could we actually have all of you come up and introduce yourselves? We don't have enough interaction. I know we've done this before, and Lou usually knows most of them, so.
I'm Andrew Jansen.
I'm Caden Langford.
I'm Barrett Smith.
Jamison Russell.
And my name is Benjamin Sisler. We are obviously from Troop 494, and we, in Boy Scouts, they have to do these things called merit badges in order to rank up. And some of those merit badges are required to get your Eagle, which is the highest rank in scouting. And to get said Eagle, there are 2 merit badges that require you to attend a public meeting, such as a city council meeting, in which you have to take notes and discuss certain topics and basically write down your opinion and discuss them with your counselor for the merit badge. So tonight we just decided, hey, let's all just come. Anyone that's working on the merit badge that's in town at the moment, just come, observe the meeting, just kind of see what happens, take your opinions, and then take them to your counselors.
You got a short meeting.
I mean, we were ready to be here for another hour, so.
That was the wrong thing to say. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it, and thank you for introducing yourselves. Do you guys have any questions? Okay. Mr. Colbert?
If there's no further business, I make a motion that the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.